Hello, everyone. I want to thank all of my friends, family, and colleagues who are here today. My name is Matuch, and I'm excited to talk about how I bridge the gap between science and policy to reduce plastic pollution. How I initially got passionate about plastic pollution is I've always loved the ocean since middle school, but after seeing this viral video in 2015 with a straw stuck in a turtle's nose, I knew I wanted to do something about it. And my initial thought was perfect, I'll just start cleaning beaches. So I grabbed all of my friends and did just that. But I realized that this was not necessarily the path I wanted to take, because no matter how many hundreds of pounds of trash for cleaning, there's still more plastic waste at these beaches. And so I thought the next step I wanted to take was to do scientific research. And while I was working at a laboratory for one of the experiments, I went to Whole Foods and got a salmon fillet. And when I put it underneath the microscope, I found microplastics. So after seeing plastic in the very food that we eat, I knew I wanted to address my career, have my career address this problem. But why is it a problem? It's a problem because plastic production has skyrocketed since 1950. And to put this into perspective, let's take a look at this graph that shows global plastic production over time. Now, I've highlighted the years that people in my family were born to make this more relatable. And between my grandma's birthday, where there's around 2.2 million tons of plastic being produced, to this drastic increase to my sister's birth year, where it's now 350 million tons of plastic being produced, this number is expected to triple by 2050. And with all this plastic being made, it all has to go somewhere, whether it be the trash or recycling bin. But unfortunately, one of those places is the ocean. And every minute, a garbage truck's worth of plastic waste ends up in the ocean. And this really underscores that the current way of plastic production and the way we use plastic is unsustainable, and we can't continue with business as usual. But whose problem is plastic pollution? First, it's an environmental problem. Plastic waste is present in almost every habitat, from deep sea sediments to Arctic snow to remote deserts throughout the Great Lakes and other inland waterways. And just focusing on ocean-related animals alone, sea turtles, marine mammals, seabirds, fish are all being impacted by plastic, by either becoming entangled in it or by eating it. And science has shown that as animals are ingesting these plastics, it's traveling through the food web and ultimately leading to our dinner plates. So plastic pollution isn't just an environmental issue, it's a human health crisis. And plastics are everywhere. They've been found in the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, and even the water that we drink. And this pervasive presence means there's no escaping plastics. And doctors keep finding it in more places. For example, in bloodstreams or blood clots in the heart, brain, and legs, or even breast milk. And it's not just this pervasive presence that's the problem, it's the chemicals and additives used to create plastic, because they're known to disrupt our endocrine systems and increase the risk of numerous health problems, including premature births, neurodevelopment disorders, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and unfortunately the list continues. And even though plastic impacts everyone, this really disproportionately impacts low-income communities, developing nations, people of color, Indigenous communities, because these communities often live closer to these polluting facilities and therefore suffer greater health impacts as a result. And so we must address this issue not just as an environmental concern, but as a pressing public health and human rights issue. And the simple truth is that in order to take care of this problem, we need interventions at every stage, from production to disposal. This diagram came from a National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report that was requested by US Congress that essentially includes recommendations for how the US can combat plastic pollution. Now, earlier I talked about how I was doing beach cleanups, and we can see that's really downstream from addressing the problem. And experts say we have to go upstream to address plastic pollution, because there is this need for reducing the production of plastic, but also the need for sustainable materials, promoting reusable products, and ultimately choosing safer options that will safeguard the environment and our health. And addressing plastic pollution requires a strong relationship between science and policy. Science provides the data we need to understand plastic's impacts and find the potential solutions, while in turn, policy shapes what research gets funded and prioritized. A great example of this is that National Academy's report I just mentioned, because this report shows how scientific research can inform policy decisions. And for my capstone project, I worked with Margaret Spring, who is the Chief Conservation and Science Officer at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And she chaired that National Academy's report and has been a key voice in urging the US government to address plastic pollution. Because by using scientific evidence, we can create policies that tackle the root causes of plastic pollution and encourage innovation in sustainable alternatives. The first objective of my capstone project is to advance a strong, science-based, and equitable global plastic treaty. In March of 2022, the United Nations Environmental Assembly came together in Kenya, and 175 countries agreed to create a global treaty to tackle plastic pollution. And this is such a crucial step because plastic pollution is a worldwide problem, and it shows that plastic pollution requires global cooperation. And a treaty is so important because it helps all of these countries work together by setting clear goals and rules to solve the plastic pollution crisis. And this treaty process is on an accelerated timeline of just 2 years, with having it be completed in 2025. And there are 5 negotiation meetings in total. And for my capstone project, I attended the 3rd and 4th meeting. My role in the negotiations have been multifaceted. I supported the Aquarium and the International Science Council by tracking the negotiations to identify the scientific needs of various countries, while also monitoring the US position to understand their negotiating stance. I would also draft statements on behalf of the Aquarium to really articulate our expectation from the treaty, while also coordinating scientists on the ground, like pictured here on the right, ensuring their expertise was incorporated into the discussions, because this really helps to bridge the gap between scientific research and policy making. So in November, I attended the 3rd negotiation meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, and this was the first meeting to review a draft of the treaty, which provided a strong starting point for discussions. And since it was my very first meeting, I was mainly a sponge and observed and learned about the process. But prior to coming to this meeting, I had initially expected that science would be a central part of the negotiations and really just guiding those discussions and decisions being made. However, that was not the case. Science was on the sidelines and were only allowed to watch without direct input. And so in response, scientists from various countries and fields came together to discuss next steps with the United Nations Environmental Program chief scientists, pictured here on the right in the pink button-up. And throughout the week, we engaged with different country delegations to highlight this issue. We also spoke with the new chair of the meeting, Luis Valles Valdivieso from Ecuador, pictured here on the left, and stressed the importance of a formally dedicated platform for scientific contributions to ensure the decisions are based on the best available evidence. Now, fast forwarding to April, we're at the 4th negotiation meeting in Ottawa, Canada. And what was really cool about this experience was that I was able to meet with Congressman Jared Huffman and Jonathan Black from the White House to discuss how the US can take a stronger leadership role in advocating for a robust treaty. And I emphasized the need to address plastic pollution from ocean-based sources and the need to reduce plastic production. And what was really crucial about this meeting was that it marked the beginning of detailed text negotiations. So looking at the picture on the right, during this meeting, they would put the text on the screen, and essentially countries are having this bracket war where they'll begin to bracket words or phrases that they support, don't support, or potentially new additional language. And my personal goal at this meeting was to understand the importance of this precise language, like the difference between using should or shall, because this really affects the obligations of the countries. And from both these meetings, there are definitely challenging global politics. In the negotiations, petroleum-producing countries use tactics to delay or weaken the treaty. They would often call for extended discussions, propose weaker policies, or even oppose addressing critical issues like reducing plastic production, and instead suggesting a focus on waste management and recycling. Additionally, the influence of the plastic industry was significant, with more lobbyists present than official country members, which further complicated the progress. But despite all of these challenges, many countries and coalitions are pushing for a strong treaty with meaningful outcomes. And supporting these efforts is crucial to secure a comprehensive and effective treaty. Now, my second objective of my Capstone project was to push the United States administration to take strong action against plastic pollution. Over the summer, the US Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, came out with this draft national strategy to prevent plastic pollution. And I assisted the aquarium team and other experts in submitting 60 pages of extensive comments because it's so important to get this strategy right. And for me, being a part of this writing process was an educational process because I was able to see the connection between science reports and a policy document. And even though this strategy has yet to come out, we know these comments were taken seriously by the Biden administration. And my role in these comments was specifically focusing on this controversial issue called advanced recycling or chemical recycling. And what advanced recycling is using heat and chemicals to transform plastic waste into fuel, oil, chemicals, or potentially back into plastic. But there is this constant question if advanced recycling really is the solution to plastic pollution, or if it really is considered recycling or not. For instance, in the state of California, and within the strategy itself, it's said that advanced recycling is not a viable solution to plastic pollution, but this topic is repeatedly brought up by the plastic producing industry as a magic solution to the problem. And so a part of my Capstone project was to really dig into this question, since there's a lot of salesmanship and greenwashing of advanced recycling. And it doesn't help that this term has 10 different names, so many different processes, and therefore very confusing. And so I wanted to decode what advanced recycling is and just provide a neutral set of information that can be understood by anyone. And so I collaborated with 2 chemical engineers and a lawyer to write this paper that plainly states what advanced recycling is, what it produces, and what are the potential impacts it may have on the environment and human health. And what I learned from this process was that there's no silver bullet to combat plastic pollution, and that we should really focus on the need to address the amount of plastic being produced rather than focusing on the waste management of plastic. Currently, this article is in draft form, and that's where this graphic came from. And our next step is to submit it to a journal for further review and publication. But what can the US do now? Our main concern is the delay in the implementation of that national strategy I just talked about, but also the differences in opinions on what actions can be taken under US law, because this affects both national and international strategies. To address this, I worked with the Aquarium and the Environmental Law Institute to create a report that identifies current legal strategies for federal agencies like the EPA or NOAA, and suggesting steps they can take using these existing policies. Senator Whitehouse, who I have pictured here with, and other advocates have been pivotal in bringing awareness on the impacts of plastic pollution. Therefore, it was so important that we went to Washington, D.C. and met with Capitol Hill staff, including those from Senator Whitehouse's office, to discuss our findings and plan our next steps. And through this experience, I've learned that the key to merging science with policy really lies in building strong relationships. Because rather than just keeping this report on the internet and leaving it be, it has to be this ongoing conversations, because that is essential for making lasting changes. So looking back on this journey, what really stands out to me is this incredible power of working together. Just looking at all the faces on this slide, each one represents someone who's been a part of the effort to tackle plastic pollution. From scientists to activists, to youth groups, indigenous people, doctors, and the list continues. Even people in the government, it's been this collective effort that's made a real impact. And we've all seen firsthand how plastic affects our lives, our oceans and coastlines. And so it's been inspiring to see everyone come together to do something about it. And for me, looking at these pictures are a visual reminder of the strength we have when we work as a team and the power of collaboration. And so my next steps are to continue working with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and attend the 5th and final negotiation meeting in Busan, South Korea this November. This involvement will allow me to continue to further contribute to the development of a comprehensive treaty. And just overall, this capstone project has deeply influenced my career goals and has reinforced my commitment to integrating scientific research into policymaking. Now, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to everyone pictured here for their incredible guidance, knowledge, and support, because without your help, this capstone project would not have been possible. And I'm truly fortunate to have the opportunity to work with such an amazing team, to form lasting relationships and friendships, and to share this journey with all of you today. And I would love to take any questions.